There's a comforting belief that advanced militaries fail only when something goes wrong.
This case challenges that assumption completely.
No dramatic breakthrough, no secret weapon,
Just a chain of perfectly reasonable decisions interacting in ways no one could pause to reconsider. The result exposes a vulnerability that exists wherever machines, humans, and physical limits intersect, and it raises uncomfortable questions about how secure defended spaces really are.
The incident began on the night of December 19th, 2025.
Ukrainian Special Forces launched 2 drones from outside Dnipro. These aircraft were designated as the FP2 attack model. They flew toward the southeast into the occupied territories.
The first threat actually came from friendly air defense.
A Ukrainian battery tracked the contacts at 2:51 a.m. The operators sat inside a mobile Buck M1 vehicle. They saw 2 slow contacts moving on their screens. The radar profile matched Russian Shahed suicide drone signatures.
The fire control officer was prepared to authorize a launch.
He held his finger over the firing button, waiting. He had 5 seconds remaining before the engagement window.
He checked the safe transit list one last time.
Corridor 7 was active from 10:30 p.m. until 4 a.m. The drones were flying perfectly inside that protected airspace. He pulled his hand back from the console immediately.
His team had nearly destroyed a vital special operation.
The drones passed the battery at exactly 2:53 a.m. They flew toward 300 kilometers of hostile airspace. The aircraft crossed into Russian-held territory at 3:12 a.m. They dropped to 60 meters above the frozen ground. The terrain of the Donbas scrolled by beneath them. Russian radar systems could not detect them at this altitude.
This invisibility was a result of basic terrestrial physics.
Radar energy always travels in a perfectly straight line.
The curvature of the Earth creates a natural blind spot.
An antenna on a truck cannot see over the horizon. The line of sight ends at roughly 35 kilometers. Any target beyond that distance remains below the radar horizon. The signal simply passes overhead into empty space above. The drone route exploited every gap created by this geometry. Russian air defense batteries guarded the sectors near Rostov. These S-400 systems had a theoretical range of 400 kilometers. That range assumes the target is flying at high altitude. The effective range collapses against something flying at 60 meters. The FP2 flight path stayed outside even that reduced range. The drones threaded between overlapping coverage zones with high precision. They avoided detection like a player in a video game. The safe corridor was 12 kilometers wide in some places. It narrowed to only 8 kilometers in the tightest sections. A drift north would reveal them to the Milarovo battery. A drift south would expose them to the T-Men complex.
The margins for error were exceedingly thin that night.
The drones simply needed the pre-programmed route to be correct.
The problem was that the airspace was not empty.
A Russian Mi-8 helicopter lifted off at 3:34 a.m. The crew was hunting for sabotage teams near rail lines. They were not looking for low-flying attack drones. Russian partisans had hit a logistics hub in November. The security screen had tightened significantly after that specific attack. Russian air defense displayed both aircraft on a single integrated display.
The operator noticed the smaller contact flying in a straight line.
Birds do not fly in such a linear fashion. The controller vectored the helicopter south to investigate the contact. The drone could not change course to avoid the intercept. It had no data link to receive new commands. It had no warning receiver to detect the approaching threat. The helicopter was not physically pushing the drone away. It was pushing Russian attention toward that specific map grid.
The search pattern alerted every radar operator in the sector.
They focused intense scrutiny on that specific flight corridor. They looked harder at faint returns they might otherwise ignore. The safe route had not moved on the map. Russian eyes had just been pointed directly at it. The drone was 10 kilometers from the Milarovo coverage zone. It held its programmed course while the geometry squeezed tighter. The distance to the radar site is about 8 kilometers. The radar horizon barrier was about to become a problem. Atmospheric effects started to matter at this close range. Temperature inversions can bend radar energy over the horizon. This phenomenon extends the detection range by many kilometers. Cold air over warm ground creates dense layers in the atmosphere. These layers act like lenses for the radar signals. They duct energy into places it should not reach. The helicopter arrived at the search coordinates at 3:41 a.m. The crew found nothing in the darkness below them. The drone had passed through 4 minutes before they arrived. The search had put them within 9 kilometers of Milarovo. A lucky radar bounce could paint a return there. The acquisition radar swept the sector at exactly 3:43 a.m. It found a faint and intermittent signal on the screen. The contact flickered at the very edge of detection. The operator watched it appear and then disappear again. He assumed it was just typical atmospheric clutter. Clutter does not usually hold such a consistent heading. He had to make a decision based on incomplete data. A report would scramble fighters and wake the command network. He decided a flickering ghost was not worth the trouble. He logged the contact as low confidence in the system. He went back to scanning his primary assigned sectors.
That one decision allowed the mission to continue forward.
The drone flew on toward 300 kilometers of steppe. The frozen grassland was empty between the Volga and Caspian. There were no cities or infrastructure worth protecting there.
The region is effectively the Russian version of Kansas.
Air Defense Command had learned an uncomfortable lesson in November. You cannot park an S-400 in the middle of nowhere. A battery needs roads and power to operate effectively. It needs personnel who require food and shelter daily. The steppe offered none of those logistical necessities. The Russians put fighters in the air instead. 2 Su-30 jets flew a pattern 12,000 meters up. They flew 80 kilometers northwest and then turned around. They flew 80 kilometers southeast and then turned again. They spent 3 hours burning fuel to watch an empty sky.
This patrol was expensive and tedious, but absolutely necessary.
Drones had been reaching targets that were supposedly safe. The fighter radar could detect another jet at vast distances. That range collapsed dramatically against a small composite drone. Radar cross-section scales with the square of dimensions. Half the size means 1/4 the detection range. The drone's signature was roughly equivalent to that of a large seagull. The ground flutter filled the scope at that altitude. Practical detection range dropped to single digits against the ground.
The drone was effectively invisible to the mechanical radar.
But radar was not the only way to hunt. The Su-30 has an infrared sensor in the nose. This passive sensor did not emit any energy signals. It just watched for heat that should not exist. Radar requires reflected energy to see a target. It sends out a pulse and listens for the bounce. A tiny target returns almost nothing usable to the receiver. The signal scatters and gets lost in the noise. Infrared sensors do not work in that specific way. They look for heat rather than reflected radio waves. The drone exhaust did not need to bounce anything. It just needed to be hotter than the background.
The engine pushed exhaust at 600 degrees Celsius.
The air temperature was measured at -15 degrees that night. This created a 615-degree temperature differential. That thermal contrast was impossible to hide from sensors. It was obvious against the frozen steppe background. The infrared return did not care about radar cross-section. Heat is simply heat to a thermal imaging sensor. The only question was the direction the sensor pointed. The sensor looked forward and down from the nose. It scanned 90 degrees to the left and right. It saw what was ahead of the aircraft. The drone sat 40 kilometers behind the Russian fighters. It was 12,000 meters below their current position.
It sat squarely in the blind spot of the jet.
The seeker was watching the ceiling of the sky. The target was moving along the floor of the world. The racetrack pattern would eventually bring the fighters around. They had 18 minutes until they reversed their course. Their sensors would sweep directly across the transit corridor. The drone had to clear the zone before they turned. The FP2 continued cruising at 160 kilometers per hour. The Russian jets were moving much faster than the drone. The fighters completed their northwest leg at 5:29 a.m. They banked into the turn to head back southeast.
The geometry flipped when they rolled out on a new heading.
They were no longer flying away from the drone. They were closing at 800 kilometers per hour combined. The infrared sensors were now scanning the correct sector. They had 4 minutes of detection range on the drone. They had 3 minutes to identify the contact positively. The R-73 missiles could engage anything the pilot could see. They were very good at seeing heat against cold backgrounds. The drones flew on with no idea of the threat. They relied on mechanical indifference and programmed waypoints. The exhaust plumes streamed into the frozen night air. 2 of Russia's most capable fighters were hunting them. The lead pilot flagged an anomaly at 5:53 a.m. The bearing was 320 at 28 kilometers. The return was weak and barely above background noise. It was moving with a consistent bearing rate, however. It was not a vehicle driving on a road. It was not an atmospheric shimmer or a thermal ghost. It was something airborne out where nothing should be. He bumped the throttle and adjusted course 15 degrees north. His wingman immediately slid into a combat spread formation. He maintained a 2-kilometer lateral separation from the lead. They were ready to bracket whatever they had found. They had 3 minutes until positive visual identification, but the drone route included a waypoint at 5:32 a.m. The drone executed a 15-degree turn to heading 095. This new course took it almost due east. Ukrainian planners had built the route based on history. They pulled patrol patterns from signals intelligence data. They knew the general idea of the Russian flights.
The waypoint was insurance against exactly this specific scenario.
The Su-30S accelerated toward the thermal contact on their screens. The drone executed its programmed turn at that exact moment. The new heading took it at right angles to their approach. It slid across their sensor field instead of toward them. The exhaust plume had been a bright point source. It rotated to show a cooler profile to the sensors. The thermal signature dropped significantly on the Russian displays. Ground clutter contaminated the return from the side angle. The contact dissolved into noise at a range of 21 kilometers. This happened at exactly 5:35 a.m. in the morning. The lead pilot adjusted his filters to increase sensitivity. You cannot chase every flicker across the vast steppe. The formation held heading for another 60 seconds. Their sensors strained to find the lost contact again. They broke off the intercept to save fuel. The fuel state was becoming a problem for the flight. They had 18 minutes to turn for the base. The other option was flaming out over the grassland. Flaming out was not an option anyone wanted to explain. The drones cleared the patrol zone at 5:54 a.m. They were still flying at 50 meters altitude. They were completely unaware of the near miss. They had passed within 21 kilometers of the fighters.
15 degrees of course change saved the mission.
90 seconds of timing was the margin of survival. The drones had 189 kilometers remaining. The Caspian Sea lay ahead in the darkness. They had to remain hidden from the surface sensors. The drones descended to 40 meters at 7:26 a.m. They activated their terminal thermal seekers at that time. The ship sat 15 kilometers ahead in the water. Every system on the ship was operational. The radar swept the horizon for threats. The crew manned the AK-630 gun mount on the bow. The ship radar painted the drone at 12 kilometers. It saw a small return moving at a slow speed. The bearing was 270 degrees off the port beam. The contact was solid on the display screens.
The problem was not the detection of the incoming threat.
The AK-630 cannon sat on the bow of the ship. Its 6 barrels were pointed forward at the darkness. The system was designed to be fully automatic. The fire control radar tracked the target independently.
It fed data into the main ballistic computer.
The computer commanded the gun mount to the target. No human reaction time was involved in the loop. The 6 barrels would wait at the intercept point. It was devastatingly effective against missiles and aircraft, but the system had physical limits to its movement. The ship's superstructure blocked the line of fire aft. The masts and exhaust stacks created a blind zone. The weapon could not shoot through its own ship. The drone was approaching from bearing 270 degrees.
It was sliding along the boundary of the cutout.
The gun could almost track it, but not quite. The fire control system struggled with this specific geometry. The radar saw the target perfectly on the approach. The computer generated a valid firing solution for the gun. The mount received the command to slew left. The gun hit its mechanical stop at bearing 268 degrees. The computer kept updating the solution every second. The gun kept trying to follow the command signal. The system threw a fault code every few seconds. It reported the target was outside the engagement envelope. It reacquired the target and tried to slew again.
The automation was now working against the ship itself.
It was chasing a solution it physically could not reach.
The captain immediately understood the geometry at 10 kilometers.
He ordered the helm hard to port immediately. He wanted to swing the bow towards the contact. This would rotate the ship and clear the gun. If he could not bring the gun to the target, he would bring the ship to the gun instead.
The Razul Gamzatov heeled sharply into a hard turn.
670 tons of steel pivoted on water. The barrels strained against the limits of traverse. They waited for the bearing to shift those degrees. The ship was still turning at a distance of 8 kilometers. The bearing of the drone was shifting slowly. It moved to 271, then to 272, but the drone was shifting its relative position too. Its approach angle changed as the geometry evolved.
The weapon stayed locked at maximum mechanical traverse.
It hunted the edge of its own cutout zone. The target drifted along just outside the firing arc. The drone crept to bearing 268 relative. It was almost inside the valid engagement zone. The gun crews watched their displays in desperation. They waited for the solution light to go green. They waited for those last degrees of clearance. The bow was coming around at 6 kilometers. The cutout boundary was rotating with the ship. The drone slid back to bearing 270 degrees. The ship's turn was pushing the contact outward. The maneuver was to pull it in at the same speed. The bearing kept hovering at the mechanical edge.
The geometry refused to resolve into a firing solution.
The system could see, but it could not shoot. The superstructure blocked the solution every single time. The captain ordered more speed, up to 4 kilometers per hour. He was trying to tighten the turn radius. He was trying to force the geometry to work.
The ship shuddered as the engines spooled up.
The bearing finally crept to 264 degrees. The gun mount swung free toward the contact. The crew finally had a valid firing solution. The operator mashed the console trigger. The weapon roared into the night at that moment. 6 barrels fired 5,000 rounds per minute. Tracers reached across the water toward the target. The target was already somewhere else by then. The burst lasted 2 seconds and fired 190 rounds. The drone had shifted back to 272 degrees. It slid outside the arc before rounds arrived. The ship was still turning at 3 kilometers range.
The operator fired at the stale bearing. He sent 140 rounds into the darkness.
The geometry had beaten them at 2 kilometers. The drone had skated along the edge of the cutout. It never gave the gun a clean shot. The crew had done everything right procedurally. The captain had maneuvered the ship correctly.
The geometry had won the engagement in the end.
The bridge announced a general all-hands brace. The first drone hit the superstructure at 7:34 a.m. A shaped charge punched through the steel plating. It detonated inside the Combat Information Center. Fuel lines ruptured across the hot metal. Fire instantly spread through the forward compartments. The second drone struck the stern 90 seconds later. The ship began heeling through its desperate turn. Tracers reached out into the empty dark.
The design flaw that sank the ship was simple.
It was not in her radar or weapons. It was the decision to mount one gun forward. Most patrol ships carry 2 guns for full coverage. This class was built for peacetime Coast Guard work. Someone decided years ago that 1 gun was enough. That decision saved money during construction. It created a 15-degree blind spot. That blind spot helped create a new artificial reef. This incident highlights the unforgiving nature of naval geometry. 1 blind spot can negate millions in defensive systems.
So do you think larger navies will adapt their designs quickly enough to counter these cheap, geometry-exploiting threats?
Share your thoughts below and subscribe to follow our investigations into the technical reality of modern warfare.